The billionaire stopped walking at 5:17 in the morning, because the red folder in the evicted woman's hand carried a stamp he had spent 30 years trying to forget. Dawn had not fully reached the street yet. The sky above the old Chicago apartment building was still the color of cold metal, and the hallway lights inside Hawthorne Court flickered against the glass doors like tired eyes refusing to close. Tasha Bennett stood on the cracked front steps in a faded nursing home scrub top, an old brown coat, black jeans, and sneakers with one loose sole, holding a 5-year-old boy against her hip while her 8-year-old daughter tried to keep a cardboard box from sliding off the curb. The box was too heavy for a child, but Ariel did not complain. She only pressed both hands to the wet cardboard and looked at her mother, waiting for the kind of instruction children should never have to need before sunrise. Behind them, 2 maintenance workers carried out a plastic laundry basket, a folded blanket, and a small blue backpack with a cartoon rocket patch worn pale from years of use. A property manager in a cream-colored coat stood under the awning with a clipboard held flat against her chest. Her hair was smooth. Her shoes were dry. Her voice was calm in the way official voices become calm when they have already decided someone else's emergency is only a procedure. "Miss Bennett, you were given notice." Tasha looked at the locked entrance behind her. "My son's medicine is inside." The woman did not blink. "Items will be cataloged." "His inhaler is not an item." Jonah stirred against Tasha's shoulder, one cheek warm against her neck, his breath small and uneven from being pulled out of sleep too early. Tasha shifted him higher, covering his head with the edge of her coat. She had not cried when the lock failed. She had not cried when the first box hit the hallway floor. She had not cried when Ariel asked if they were still allowed to say apartment 2D was home. But when the property manager said cataloged, Tasha's fingers tightened around the red folder so hard the bent corners pressed into her palm. That folder was the only thing she had not let anyone touch. It was old with soft edges and a dark stain near the top right corner where coffee had once spilled years before. A rubber band held it closed. On the front, written in black marker, were 3 words: "Do not lose." Marcus Ellison should not have been there yet. His investor walkthrough was scheduled for 9 o'clock, after the lobby was supposed to be clear, after the fresh paint smell had time to cover the damp carpet, after the building looked less like people lived there and more like a project ready for money. He had arrived early because traffic from his downtown hotel was light, and because he liked seeing properties before his staff polished the story. He stepped from a black sedan in a charcoal suit and wool overcoat, followed by an assistant carrying a tablet and a driver holding an umbrella. At first, Marcus saw what a man like him was trained to see. A site issue, a resident dispute, a poor optics problem before a major meeting. Then the cardboard box slipped from Ariel's hands. School papers scattered across the wet sidewalk. A plastic bag of receipts slid under the curb. The red folder struck the concrete. The rubber band snapped loose, and several pages fanned open in the pale dawn light. Tasha dropped to one knee so fast Jonah clung to her coat. "Do not touch that," she said, not to Ariel, not to the workers, but to everyone. Her voice was low and sharp. A mother's warning. A witness's warning. Marcus stopped 3 steps from the entrance. One page had flipped upward in the wind, showing an old legal aid stamp in faded blue ink. Southside Family Housing Rights Center. Case intake prefix. RF 1187. Marcus stared at it. The cold morning moved through him in a way the weather could not explain. His mother had kept a paper with that same stamp in a kitchen drawer when he was 11. He remembered the red folder too, or thought he did. He remembered his mother smoothing her uniform before asking a man at a desk to read her receipt. He remembered standing beside her while adults spoke about missing paperwork, as if poverty itself had misplaced the truth. The property manager noticed his face and hurried forward. "Mr. Ellison, this is being handled." Tasha looked up. From the sidewalk, rain mist clung to her braids and dark circles sat under her eyes, but her stare did not lower. "Handled is what people say when they want the damage quiet." Marcus did not answer. He was looking at the folder in her hands now, at the old stamp, at the case number, at the words "Do not lose" written across the front like an order from someone who knew exactly what could happen when a poor woman's paper disappeared. "Where did you get that folder?" he asked. Tasha pulled it closer to her chest. "From my mother." Marcus felt his assistant shift beside him. The property manager's clipboard rose slightly, as if paper could block what had just entered the morning. "That folder," Marcus said slowly, "should not be here." Tasha stood, holding her son, her daughter, and the red folder all within the small reach of her body. "Neither should my children." The hallway behind her glowed with artificial light. The new lock on apartment 2D waited upstairs. The medicine was still inside. The investor tour was less than 4 hours away. And Marcus Ellison realized the question was no longer why this woman had been evicted at dawn. The question was why the folder in her hand carried a piece of his own past, and who had been trying so hard to make sure no one read it before morning. 3 hours before the red folder hit the sidewalk, Tasha Bennett woke to the sound of the radiator tapping like a tired finger against the wall. It was 2:08 in the morning, too late to call it night and too early to call it day, the kind of hour that belonged to nurses, truck drivers, cleaning crews, security guards, and mothers who could not afford to let the world catch them unprepared. She sat up on the edge of the couch in apartment 2D, still wearing the faded scrub pants from her shift at the nursing home, and waited until her eyes adjusted to the small blue glow of the microwave clock. The apartment was quiet except for Jonah's breathing in the bedroom, and the soft hum of the old refrigerator. Tasha stood carefully, folded the thin blanket she had slept under, and smoothed it across the back of the couch. The couch was also her bed, but every morning she made it look like a living room again before the children woke up. It mattered to her. Not because anyone important ever came inside, but because Ariel and Jonah deserved to wake in a home, not in evidence of exhaustion. Apartment 2D was small, but it was clean. The kitchen floor had been mopped the night before after Tasha came home from her second job washing hotel linens on the south side. 2 lunch containers sat upside down on a towel near the sink. A calendar hung on the refrigerator with due dates circled in blue ink and small notes written beside them. Rent partial paid, medicine refill, school form, call office again. Next to the calendar, Ariel had taped a drawing of their apartment building under a yellow sun, with 3 stick figures standing at the front door. Tasha's figure had long braids and arms stretched wide enough to cover both children. Jonah had added a crooked red heart near the window with crayon, because he said every house needed one place where it was warm. Tasha touched the drawing with 2 fingers, then turned toward the kitchen table. The red folder sat there under the stove light. It looked too bright for the room, even old and worn at the corners, as if it had been built to be noticed when everything else was being ignored. The rubber band around it had been replaced twice. The cover had a coffee stain from a morning Tasha barely remembered and 3 words written across the front in her mother's handwriting. "Do not lose." Tasha opened it the same way some people opened a Bible, not because the paper was holy, but because it was the only thing in the apartment that had survived every office, every move, every denial, every person who said they had no record. Inside were money order receipts clipped by month, her lease copy, 2 hardship request forms, Jonah's medical letter, Ariel's school contact sheet, a printed email confirmation from the tenant portal, and 1 old folded letter from her mother. The letter was not legal proof, but Tasha kept it in the front pocket anyway. "Baby girl, if they lose your paper, they lose your voice. Do not let them make you disappear on paper." Tasha read that sentence every time the building office told her something was missing. Her mother, Denise Bennett, had worked nights as a janitor at a legal aid office after cleaning classrooms during the day. She was not a lawyer. She never pretended to be. But she had seen enough frightened people come through that office clutching envelopes, receipts, notices, and court dates to understand something Tasha learned later. When poor people lost documents, other people called it failure. When offices lost documents, they called it processing. Denise brought home the red folder after the legal aid office moved locations, and old supplies were being thrown away. She gave it to Tasha when Tasha was 17 and said, "You will not always have money, but you will always need proof." At the time, Tasha thought it sounded dramatic. Now at 32, with 2 sleeping children, a rent ledger full of strange fees, and an apartment office that smiled while saying incomplete documentation, she understood her mother had not been dramatic. She had been warning her. Tasha checked the first money order receipt again, though she already knew the number by heart. $400 paid on the 3rd. Then $325 paid on the 10th. Then $150 after the nursing home, added 2 extra overnight shifts. She had not paid everything all at once, but she had paid everything she could, exactly the way Elaine Porter at the office told her to do when Jonah's emergency clinic bill pushed the month sideways. Bring proof, Elaine had said. We can review hardship if you bring proof. So Tasha brought proof. She brought the hospital note, the payment plan from the clinic, the money order stubs, her work schedule, even a letter from Ariel's school counselor explaining the family's temporary hardship. Elaine scanned the documents while Tasha sat in a plastic chair with Jonah sleeping against her lap. Tasha watched the scanner light pass over each page. She watched Elaine place the papers in a stack. She watched her type something into the computer. 3 days later, the portal said no hardship documents received. That was when the red folder stopped being a habit and became a shield. A 229 Jonah coughed from the bedroom. Tasha closed the folder, slipped the rubber band around it, and went to him before he fully woke. He was 5, small for his age, with soft cheeks and serious eyes that looked too much like an old man when he was sick. His inhaler spacer sat on the crate beside his mattress, next to a plastic dinosaur cup and a folded pair of socks. Tasha knelt and placed one hand lightly on his back. Slow, baby. You are all right. Jonah opened one eye. Is it morning? Not yet. Do you have work? I already came from work. Then why are you awake? Tasha smiled because the truth was too heavy for a child who still believed morning had rules. Because lunchboxes do not pack themselves. Jonah accepted that and closed his eye again. Tasha waited until his breathing settled, then checked the medicine bag beside the crate. Inhaler, spacer, allergy tablets, refill paper. She made a note to call the pharmacy after school drop-off. The refill was ready, but she had to wait until her direct deposit cleared to pick it up. In the narrow bedroom, Ariel slept curled around a worn stuffed rabbit with one button eye. She was 8, but she had started sleeping with her backpack near the bed the week the first notice appeared on the door. Tasha hated that more than the notice. A child should not sleep beside a backpack as if life might demand a quick exit. Ariel's braids were neat because Tasha had redone them on Sunday night with tired hands and a comb missing 2 teeth, but a few little curls had already escaped near her forehead. The girl looked peaceful only when she slept. Awake, she watched too much. She counted too much. She heard adult words from other rooms and stored them in silence. Tasha pulled the blanket higher around her daughter's shoulder and whispered, "You are still a child." Ariel did not wake. At 3:04, Tasha started packing lunches. Peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices from the last 2 apples, crackers for Jonah. A small note for Ariel that said, "You are loved more than bills can count." She hesitated before placing the note in the lunch container. Ariel was old enough to understand why her mother wrote it. Too old, maybe. Tasha put it in anyway. Love should not wait until life became easier. At 3:41, she opened the hallway door just enough to listen. Hawthorne Court was quiet. A buzzing light near the stairwell flickered on and off. Somewhere upstairs, a faucet dripped steadily. Someone's television murmured behind a wall. On the floor near her door was another notice, slid partly under the threshold. Tasha bent down and picked it up. Final possession review. Scheduled access confirmation. She read it twice, then walked straight to the table and placed it inside the red folder. The notice had no time written in clear language, no person's name in ink, no explanation of why her payments had not been credited. It was the kind of paper designed to look official without being understandable. Tasha wrote the date and exact time she found it in blue pen on the back. 3:43 a.m. found under door. Children asleep. She added it to the folder because her mother had taught her that if the world gave you confusion, you labeled it. By 4:12, Tasha was dressed in a clean scrub top, the old brown coat, black jeans, and the sneakers she kept telling herself she would replace when something else stopped needing money first. She tied her braids low at the back of her neck and washed her face with cold water so the children would not see how tired she was. In the mirror, her eyes were darker underneath than they had been a year ago. Her hands looked older too, knuckles dry from laundry soap and sanitizer, nails short, skin rough at the fingertips. She did not put on makeup. She had no time, and more than that, she had stopped wanting to paint rest onto a face that had earned its tiredness honestly. She stood straight, adjusted her coat, and looked at herself until the woman in the mirror looked back with something firmer than fear. Poverty could wrinkle a life, but she would not let it bend her posture. At 4:36, Ariel woke on her own and came into the kitchen holding the stuffed rabbit by one ear. She saw the red folder on the table and then the new notice beside it. Her face changed before she said anything. Is that from the office? Tasha turned from the stove. Yes. Are we in trouble? No. Baby. We are in paperwork. Ariel thought about that. Paperwork feels like trouble. Tasha could not argue. She poured oatmeal into 2 bowls, added a little brown sugar to the children's and none to hers, then sat across from her daughter. Listen to me. We paid what we could. I brought them the forms. I have receipts. I have copies. Nobody gets to tell us we did not try. Ariel looked at the folder. Grandma's folder knows? Tasha touched the red cover. Grandma's folder remembers. Jonah came in rubbing his eyes, dragging his blanket behind him. Does the folder remember dinosaurs? Ariel almost smiled. Tasha did smile. It remembers important things, so yes. For 12 minutes the apartment felt almost normal. Oatmeal cooling in bowls. A child asking about dinosaurs. A mother wiping a sticky spoon. The radiator tapping. The refrigerator humming. Outside the window, dawn had not arrived, but the sky had begun to loosen from black to deep blue. Then someone knocked on the door. Not a neighbor's knock. Not Mrs. Alvarez from across the hall asking to borrow foil. This was flat, official, and timed too early to be kind. Tasha stood slowly. Ariel froze with her spoon halfway to her mouth. Jonah pulled his blanket under his chin. The knock came again. Tasha picked up the red folder before she walked to the door. She did not think about it. Her hand simply knew. Through the peephole she saw Elaine Porter's cream coat, 2 maintenance workers, and a man she did not recognize holding a tablet. Tasha opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. It is not even 5 in the morning. Elaine's expression was polished and empty. Ms. Bennett, we are here for scheduled possession. Tasha held the red folder against her chest. No. I have a review pending. There is no completed hardship review in the system. Because you lost the papers. We have no record of that. Behind Tasha, Ariel whispered. Mama. Tasha did not turn around. Her eyes stayed on Elaine, but her voice softened for her children. Put on your coats. Elaine glanced at the red folder, then away too quickly. Tasha saw it. The small look. The recognition she was not supposed to notice. She tightened her fingers around the worn cover. In that moment, before the chain came off, before the boxes moved, before the billionaire arrived too early and saw the stamp that belonged to his own past, Tasha understood something clearly. They were not only trying to take her apartment. They were trying to make sure the story inside the red folder never reached anyone who could read it and care. Marcus Ellison learned to read numbers before he learned to trust rooms. That was what poverty had done to him first. It taught him that a number on a notice could decide whether a mother slept, whether a child ate, whether a landlord smiled, whether a door opened. By the time he was 46, he owned more doors than he could personally count. His company, Ellison Community Holdings, controlled apartment buildings across Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Cleveland, with polished brochures promising safe redevelopment, dignified housing, and community-centered renewal. His name appeared on magazine covers beside words like visionary, self-made, and responsible wealth. In boardrooms, investors called him the rare billionaire who understood working people. In interviews, Marcus spoke carefully about his childhood on the South Side, about cold radiators, late fees, and the woman who raised him while cleaning offices where other people made decisions. He never said too much. Pain was useful in small amounts when spoken by a successful man. Too much of it made rich people look away. That morning at 4:48, while Tasha Bennett held a red folder behind a chained apartment door, Marcus stood in the penthouse suite of a downtown hotel, buttoning a white dress shirt in front of a window that overlooked a city still mostly asleep. The skyline was dark blue. Lake Michigan was a black sheet beyond the buildings. On the table beside him were 2 phones, a leather portfolio, a tablet, and a speech draft for the 9 o'clock investor walkthrough at Hawthorne Court. The first line said, "We do not remove communities, we restore them." Marcus stared at that sentence longer than he needed to. Sounded right. Sounded like him. It sounded like the promise he had built his company on. But promises could become branding if nobody checked the hallway. His assistant, Lauren, had already sent the morning brief. Hawthorne Court transition status. 91% complete. resident concerns, categorized, vacancy representation, investor ready, legal exposure low, outstanding hardship cases, none verified. Marcus read the summary while fastening his cuff links. The report was clean, too clean, but he had seen thousands like it. Clean reports were what executives were trained to want. Messy reports meant delays, calls with counsel, tense board meetings, and investors asking whether compassion had become inefficiency. Marcus did not believe compassion was inefficient. That was what he told himself. Still, he had learned to rely on the people beneath him. Regional managers, compliance teams, property transition leads, legal reviewers. He could not personally inspect every notice, every payment receipt, every hardship form. That was the logic of scale. It was also the beginning of blindness. 502 Victor Lang called. Victor was head of property transition. A man with a soft voice, gray-blue eyes, and the careful patience of someone who could turn harm into policy without ever sounding cruel. He had been with the company for 3 years, recruited after decades in compliance and redevelopment consulting. He knew vacancy laws, investor timelines, relocation language, and the weak spots where a resident's confusion could be made to look like consent. Marcus trusted him because Victor never seemed emotional. Marcus had once mistaken that for integrity. "You are still planning to arrive early?" Victor asked. Marcus slipped on his charcoal jacket. "Yes. I want to see the building before the investor group. The site will be in preparation. Minor possession activity may be underway." Marcus looked up from the mirror. Possession activity at dawn? Scheduled before resident traffic increases. Less disruption. Less disruption. Marcus had heard versions of that phrase all his life. It was the kind of phrase that meant the person being disrupted had been removed from the definition. Any families involved? One unresolved household. Non-compliant. Documentation incomplete. Local team has handled it. Marcus walked to the table and touched the speech draft with 2 fingers. "Do they have children?" There was the smallest pause. 2 minors, but the file indicates multiple notices and no verified hardship. Marcus turned toward the window. Far below, headlights moved like slow sparks along Michigan Avenue. "I want no scene before investors arrive." "That is exactly why the team is moving early," Victor said. "Hallways clear by 7. Lobby reset by 8. Walkthrough remains clean." Clean. There it was again. Marcus let the word sit in his mouth without saying it back. When he was 11, his mother had worn a Navy janitor uniform with her name stitched in white thread over the pocket. Ruth Ellison carried receipts in a brown envelope and kept a red legal aid folder in the second kitchen drawer beneath dish towels. Marcus remembered the folder because his mother touched it the way people touched money they did not have enough of. She had taken it with her after their landlord claimed a payment was missing. Marcus remembered sitting beside her on a plastic chair at Southside Family Housing Rights Center, swinging his feet above the floor while a black woman behind a desk stamped papers and told Ruth, "Do not let them make you disappear on paper." He remembered the stamp. Faded blue ink. He remembered his mother's hand covering his when the case dragged on too long. He remembered coming home one morning to a door that would not open because the building owner said the file had closed. Marcus made his first million believing he would never let another child stand outside a locked apartment because someone had misfiled a mother's life. Then he made 100 million. Then 1 billion. Then his promise grew departments. Departments grew dashboards. Dashboards grew green check marks. And somewhere along the way, a hallway became a statistic again. At 5:11, Lauren knocked once and entered with his coat. She was 29, precise, ambitious, and loyal enough to tell him the truth only when she was sure he wanted it. "Car is downstairs," she said. "The investor packet has been updated." Marcus took the tablet she offered. What changed? Victor's team added a vacancy readiness appendix. Hawthorne Court should present well. Marcus scrolled through photographs. Repainted lobby trim, repaired mailboxes, new security camera, fresh signage, empty hallway. Empty hallway. He paused on the image. A clean corridor, fluorescent lights, no people, no shoes outside doors, no strollers, no school papers taped to walls. Investors liked empty hallways. Empty hallways suggested control. But Marcus's mother had once told him a hallway without people could still hold shame if you knew where to look. "Who took these photos?" he asked. Local management. When? Lauren checked. Late last night. Marcus zoomed in. Near the edge of one image, half hidden by the frame, was a blur of red on the floor beside a door. Could have been a folder. Could have been a cleaning sign. Could have been nothing. He moved on because powerful men often move past the thing that will later explain everything. Downstairs, the black sedan waited beneath the hotel canopy. Marcus stepped inside with his coat buttoned, his shoes polished, his watch silent under his sleeve. Lauren sat beside him with the tablet. The driver pulled into the pre-dawn streets, passing delivery trucks, street cleaners, and workers waiting for buses with lunch bags in their hands. Marcus watched them through tinted glass and felt the familiar discomfort of being able to recognize their fatigue without having to share it anymore. The city at dawn belonged to people like his mother had been. People going to work before the speeches started. People whose names appeared in systems only when they owed something. People whose proof had to be carried in folders because trust was too expensive. Lauren reviewed the schedule. Walkthrough at 9. Press availability at 10:30. Lunch with the financing group at noon. Board call at 2. Marcus nodded. And the unresolved household? Lauren glanced at her tablet. Unit 2D. Tasha Bennett. Single mother. Balance dispute. Local file says no completed hardship packet. Balance amount? $2,186.70, including fees. Including fees, Marcus repeated. Lauren looked at him. Do you want me to flag it? Marcus almost said yes. Then his phone buzzed with a message from Victor. Site team confirms possession in progress. Hallway will be cleared before arrival. Marcus read the message and felt the old memory again. His mother standing with a red folder in one hand and a key that no longer worked in the other. He typed back only, I am arriving now. The sedan turned off the main road toward Hawthorne Court. The sky had begun to lighten, but the street lights were still on. From half a block away, Marcus saw cardboard boxes near the curb and a small girl bending over papers on the sidewalk. He saw a woman in an old brown coat holding a child. He saw Elaine Porter under the awning with a clipboard. He saw the red folder fall open in the damp dawn light. Before the car fully stopped, before Lauren could finish saying his name, Marcus recognized the faded blue stamp on one exposed page. Not from a report. Not from a dashboard. From a kitchen drawer. From a plastic chair. From his mother's hand. And in that instant, the billionaire who had built a company to protect people from disappearing on paper realized his own system might have learned how to erase them better than anyone. Marcus Ellison stepped out of the black sedan before the driver could fully open the umbrella. The morning air hit his face cold and damp, carrying the smell of wet cardboard, old brick, and coffee from a corner store that had just turned on its lights. Behind him, Lauren called his name once, but he did not turn around. He was looking at the red folder in Tasha Bennett's hands, at the faded blue stamp exposed between bent pages, at the words "Do not lose" written across the cover like a warning that had traveled through years to meet him on the sidewalk. Elaine Porter moved quickly from the awning, cream coat buttoned, clipboard held high against her chest. Mr. Ellison, this is a local possession matter. We were clearing the hallway before the walkthrough. Marcus looked past her to the boxes on the curb. A folded blanket had fallen partly into a puddle. A child's spelling worksheet clung to the wet concrete. Ariel was trying to peel it up without tearing it, her small fingers moving carefully, too carefully for 8 years old. Jonah rested against Tasha's shoulder, his eyes half open, his breath catching now and then in a way Marcus could hear even over the low rumble of traffic. The child needs medicine, Marcus said. Elaine's professional smile held for 1 second too long. Essential items will be cataloged and released according to procedure. Tasha let out a quiet sound that was not a laugh. That word again. Marcus turned toward her. What word? Procedure. She shifted Jonah higher on her hip and pressed the red folder tighter to her ribs. That is what people say when they want a mother to stand still while they make her smaller. Elaine's jaw tightened. Miss Bennett has been offered multiple opportunities to resolve her file. My file? Tasha said. You mean the file where my payments disappeared? The file where my hardship packet disappeared? The file where I somehow refused help I asked for 3 times? She looked at Marcus then, not as if he were a savior, but as if he were another locked door with a more expensive handle. People like you only read files after people like me are already outside. The sentence landed in the gray dawn with the force of something Marcus had heard before in another voice. His mother's voice, lower and tired, sitting at a legal aid desk while he swung his feet under a plastic chair. They read it wrong after they put us out. Marcus looked at the folder again. Where did your mother get that? Tasha's eyes narrowed. Why do you care? Elaine stepped in. Mr. Ellison, I would not rely on materials presented during a disruption. The system has the complete record. Tasha turned slowly toward her. The system has what you left in it. A maintenance worker carrying a plastic tote paused near the doorway. Another resident opened a second-floor window and leaned out, robe pulled tight, watching. Across the street, a bus hissed to a stop, and two people waiting under the shelter turned their heads toward the scene. Marcus felt the morning gathering witnesses. He also felt the old instinct of power, the urge to pull the scene inside, lower the temperature, ask for reports, let professionals explain. That instinct had built conference rooms. It had not opened his mother's door. Open the apartment, Marcus said. Elaine blinked. Excuse me. Apartment 2D. Open it so she can get the medicine. Elaine lowered her voice. Sir, the possession has been executed. Re-entry before review could create complications. Tasha looked at Marcus. Listen to her. My son's lungs are a complication now. Marcus kept his eyes on Elaine. Open it. Elaine did not move. I need Victor's approval. That name made Tasha's face change. Not fear exactly. Recognition of the person behind the curtain. Victor Lang approved this before sunrise? Marcus looked back at her. You know him. I know his emails. I know his initials. I know every time I asked where my paperwork went, his office answered with another fee. She lifted the red folder slightly. And I know this folder started making people nervous when they saw what was inside. Marcus held out his hand, not touching it. May I see one page? Tasha stepped back half a foot. Ariel immediately moved closer to her mother, still clutching the damp worksheet. Mama, the child whispered. Do not give it away. Marcus heard that. He lowered his hand. I will not take it from you. Tasha studied him, measuring the space between his polished shoes and her wet sneakers, between his wool coat and her old brown one, between the car behind him and the boxes behind her. That is what they all say before they scan it and lose it. Then you hold it, Marcus said. Show me from there. Something in Tasha's expression shifted, not toward trust, but toward cautious control. She opened the folder herself, keeping one arm around Jonah and the other angled to shield the papers from the damp air. The first page was a money order receipt. The second was a hardship request with a tenant portal confirmation number. The third was Jonah's medical letter. The fourth carried the faded blue stamp from Southside Family Housing Rights Center. Marcus leaned closer. His chest tightened. The stamp was older than the other papers, its ink uneven, the lower curve of the emblem slightly broken. He knew that flaw. He had stared at it as a boy while his mother waited for someone to believe her. This is from the old legal aid office on 71st Street, he said quietly. Tasha's eyes sharpened. It was. Before they moved. Your mother worked there? She cleaned there. Nights. She saved folders people left behind because she said poor people lose their voice when paper goes missing. Marcus looked at the cover again. Do not lose. The handwriting was not his mother's, but the warning belonged to the same world. He looked at the stamped page. A case intake prefix sat near the top. RF 1187. Why is this case number in your tenant packet? He asked. I do not know, Tasha said. It was in the folder when my mother gave it to me. She said if anybody ever made me fight for a door, I should keep everything in one place. Elaine interrupted. That historical material has no bearing on the current action. Tasha snapped the folder halfway closed. You said that before you saw it. Elaine's lips parted, then closed. Marcus noticed. He had spent years in negotiation rooms where people revealed more by stopping themselves than by speaking. What is in the current file? He asked Lauren. Lauren had stepped beside him with the tablet, coat collar raised against the cold. She tapped quickly. Tasha Bennett, Unit 2D status. Possession complete. Hardship packet. Incomplete. Payment plan. No verified partials. Relocation offer. Declined. Tenant cooperation low. Tasha's face went still. Ariel looked up at her mother. Did you decline? Tasha crouched slightly, balancing Jonah carefully. No, baby. I asked for help. Elaine said. The portal reflects documented contact attempts. Tasha opened the folder again. Faster this time. Here. Money order copy. Here. Scan confirmation. Here. School letter. Here. Medical form. Here. Email where your office told me to bring the same packet again because the first one was not showing. Marcus looked at Lauren. Do the confirmation numbers match anything in our system? Lauren hesitated. I would need access to archived submissions. Get it? Elaine said. Mr. Ellison, we are less than 4 hours from the walkthrough. Victor. Requested the hallways clear by 7. Marcus looked at her. I am standing in the hallway now. Sir, investors are expecting readiness. Tasha looked at him with tired, burning eyes. So that is the deadline. Not the law. Not my children. A tour. The maintenance worker at the door looked down. A neighbor at the second-floor window muttered something Marcus could not hear. The city bus pulled away, leaving diesel smell and a wider silence behind. Marcus felt the old memory open fully now. His mother at the legal aid office, the red folder on her lap, the stamp on the page, the phrase missing documentation spoken by a man who had never missed a meal over a document. He turned back to Tasha. What did you mean when you said the papers disappeared? Tasha's grip tightened around the folder. Every time I brought proof, the balance changed. Every time I asked for review, a new fee appeared. Every time I showed a receipt, they said it was not attached to the right case. Then last week, Elaine saw this red folder and asked where I got it. Marcus looked at Elaine. Why? Elaine's face hardened. Because residents sometimes bring unrelated documents to delay enforcement. Did you recognize it? Marcus asked. No, the answer came too fast. Tasha gave a soft, bitter nod. There it is. Marcus reached for the stamped page again, stopped himself, and let Tasha hold it where he could read. Under the old case prefix, partly faded, was a handwritten note. Filed with witness copy. DB. Intake support.
Ere tenant.
Marcus went cold.
Ere Ruth Ellison.
His mother's initials. The sidewalk, the boxes, the dawn, the investors, the entire building seemed to narrow around those 2 letters. Tasha saw his face and understood only that something had changed. What is it? She asked. Marcus did not answer immediately. He could not. Elaine moved closer. Mr. Ellison, with respect, this is not the appropriate setting for reviewing unverified historical paperwork. Marcus looked at her, and for the first time that morning his voice lost all corporate softness. The appropriate setting was before her belongings were on the curb. Jonah coughed against Tasha's shoulder. The sound pulled everyone back to the present. Tasha closed the folder with one hand and looked toward the locked building door. My son's inhaler is upstairs. Marcus turned to the maintenance worker. Open apartment 2D. Elaine's phone buzzed. She glanced down and went pale. Victor is on his way. Tasha looked from Elaine to Marcus. Good, she said. Then he can explain why a folder from my mother's cleaning job has your mother's initials inside it. Marcus stared at the red folder, then at the building he had come to present as a success story. Behind the glass doors, the hallway lights flickered again. Upstairs, apartment 2D was locked. Inside it was a medicine bag, a refrigerator drawing, and a life the company file had already marked as cleared. Outside, in Tasha's hands, was a folder that connected 2 mothers, 2 evictions, and a secret someone had kept buried long enough to become policy. The first thing Marcus Ellison did was not believe Tasha Bennett completely. That truth would shame him later, but in the cold dawn outside Hawthorne Court, with investors less than 4 hours away and a property manager insisting the system was clean, Marcus still had the reflex of a man trained to trust records before faces. He believed something was wrong. He believed the red folder mattered. He believed the stamp on the old page had reached into his own childhood for a reason he did not yet understand. But belief in a problem was not the same as belief in a person, and Tasha could see the difference in his eyes. She had seen it before. In office clerks. In school administrators. in hospital billing staff, in everyone who looked at a poor mother and thought, maybe she is telling the truth, but let me check the file first. Marcus turned to Lauren. Pull the tenant file, the payment ledger, archived submissions, and any communication logs for Unit 2D. Lauren's thumbs moved across the tablet. Elaine Porter stood near the glass entrance, her clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. Behind her, the maintenance workers waited with the uncomfortable stillness of people who had been told to move boxes, but had accidentally walked into a story that could move them back. Ariel crouched beside the cardboard box on the curb, gathering damp school papers one by one and laying them across the top as if neatness could rescue them. Jonah rested against Tasha's shoulder, still half asleep, his small hand gripping the collar of her coat. Tasha held the red folder under one arm and watched Marcus watch the screen. The portal shows possession complete at 5:06 a.m., Lauren said. Hardship packet incomplete. Partial payments not verified. Relocation assistance offered and declined. Tenant cooperation rating low. Tasha laughed once, too tired for bitterness to fully rise. There it is. They gave me a grade for how quietly I let them lose my life. Marcus looked at her. Did you decline relocation? No. Did you receive a written relocation offer? No. Elaine stepped forward. The offer was generated through the portal. Tasha looked at her. Generated is not received. Marcus glanced at Lauren. Was it opened? Lauren checked. There is no resident view confirmation. Elaine's mouth tightened. Residents often fail to check portal messages. Tasha lifted the red folder. That is why I came in person. 3 times. With paper. With a child on my lap. With the same documents your office told me were missing. Marcus opened the payment ledger. The balance showed $2,186.70, but the line items were strange even before he understood them. Base rent. Late fee. Legal preparation fee. File handling fee. Reprocessing fee. Notice delivery fee. Compliance review fee. A smaller payment appeared, then vanished into a suspense category. Another payment was marked unallocated. Another had a note, pending verification. Marcus frowned. Why are her partial payments not applied to rent? Elaine answered smoothly. Because without a completed hardship packet, partials remain unresolved until the account is reviewed. But if partials remain unresolved, the hardship packet appears incomplete because the balance does not reflect payment effort, Marcus said. Elaine paused. Tasha's eyes sharpened. She had not heard anyone from the company say it that plainly before. Marcus looked at Lauren. Check. Archived submissions. Lauren opened a second window. The system loaded slowly. A spinning circle reflected in the wet glass behind them. Across the street, the first real line of morning traffic began to move. People heading to work slowed their steps as they passed. A man in a transit jacket stopped near the bus shelter. A woman carrying a lunch bag stood under the corner store awning. In the second-floor window, the neighbor in the robe had not moved. The building was waking up around the secret. Lauren said, There are 2 archived upload attempts from the tenant. Open them. The files are marked corrupted. Tasha's grip tightened on the folder. Corrupted. Elaine nodded as if the word had solved something. That is what I explained to Ms. Bennett. If the system cannot read the documents, we cannot verify them. Tasha turned toward Marcus. She watched the scanner take them. Did you scan them? Marcus asked Elaine. My office processes many documents. Did you scan hers? Elaine's gaze moved briefly to the red folder. I do not recall. Tasha opened the folder with one hand and pulled out a printed email. You recalled enough to send this. She held it up but did not let go. Marcus leaned in. Elaine Porter, Property Office, Subject. Hardship documents received for preliminary review. Bring originals if requested. Date, 3 weeks earlier. Marcus looked at Elaine. Why does the file say no completed packet? Elaine's cheeks colored slightly, not with guilt exactly, but with the irritation of being asked questions in front of people she was used to managing. Preliminary receipt does not mean approval. No one said approval. I asked why it says no packet. Elaine did not answer fast enough. Lauren looked down at the tablet again. There is a status override 2 days after that email. Marcus turned. By whom? Transition office. Name. Lauren hesitated. Victor Lang. Tasha's expression did not change, but her shoulders did. They drew tighter under the old coat. He is the one who kept moving the line. Marcus looked at her. What line? The one between incomplete and impossible. She slid another paper from the red folder. First they said bring proof of Jonah's medical expense. I brought it. Then they said the school letter needed a date. I got another one. Then they said money orders were not enough unless they matched the portal balance. I showed the receipts. Then they added fees. Every time I came close to being current, the number moved. Marcus took in the receipts without touching them. The amounts matched the unallocated payments in the ledger. The dates matched. The money order numbers matched. The red folder was doing what the system had refused to do, keeping a straight line through a maze built to exhaust her. Still, one piece troubled him. The old stamped page.
RF rok 1187. DB.
Intake support.
Tenant.
It belonged to a time long before Tasha moved into Hawthorne Court, before Ellison Community Holdings existed, before Marcus had enough money to buy buildings. Why was it in this folder, and why had Elaine looked away when she saw it? Marcus turned to Lauren. Search the archive for case prefix RF 1187. Lauren lowered her voice. Company archive or public legal archive? Both. Elaine stiffened. Mr. Ellison, that prefix appears unrelated to current operations. Tasha said. She keeps saying unrelated like she is afraid it is not. Marcus looked at Elaine. Step back. Elaine stepped back, but only because everyone was watching. The maintenance worker nearest the door glanced at the lockbox clipped to his belt. Marcus noticed. Do you have access to apartment 2D? The worker swallowed. Yes, sir. Then open it for the medicine. Elaine raised her hand. Victor specifically instructed that the unit remain secured until possession materials are inventoried. I did not ask what Victor instructed. The worker looked from Marcus to Elaine, then toward the stairs inside. His fear was not dramatic, but it was real. Sir, if I open without clearance, I could lose my job. Tasha heard that and, despite everything, looked at him with tired understanding. I am not trying to cost you your job. That was who she was. Standing outside her own locked home, with her child's medicine inside, and still careful not to break another working person's life. Marcus felt that sentence cut through him. More deeply than any accusation. He took out his phone and called Victor. The call went to voicemail. He called again. This time Victor answered. Marcus, I am 5 minutes out. Why did your office override Tasha Bennett's hardship packet? A pause. Because the packet failed verification. Her receipts match unallocated payments in our ledger. Unallocated is not verified. Your office changed the status after Elaine sent a receipt confirmation. Receipt of documents is not approval. Marcus looked at Tasha. She was watching his face, not the phone, as if trying to decide whether his confusion would become action or excuse. Did you mark relocation assistance declined? Marcus asked. Victor's voice remained calm. The tenant did not complete the required acknowledgement. Did she receive it? It was made available through the portal. There is no resident view confirmation. Portal non-use is common among non-compliant tenants. Tasha closed her eyes for 1 second. Non-compliant. The word was designed to sound neutral and land like a stain. Ariel looked up from the box. Mama, what does that mean? Tasha opened her eyes. It means he does not know us. Marcus turned away slightly, phone still at his ear. Victor, pause the possession until I review the documents. Victor's answer came too quickly. I strongly advise against that. Why? Because once you create an exception in front of residents, every open case becomes a public negotiation. We have investor obligations, and the hallway must be clear by 7. There it was again. Clear by 7. Marcus looked at the wet sidewalk, at Ariel's small hands, at the folder pressed against Tasha's chest, at the locked door behind Elaine. I asked why the file conflicts with the paper in her hand. Victor's voice cooled. Because paper can be staged. Tasha heard it through the speaker and lifted her head. Marcus had not realized the call was loud enough. Staged, she said. Elaine looked down. Lauren stopped typing. Mr. Lang, Tasha said, stepping closer. I carried that folder through double shifts, clinic visits, school meetings, and every office visit where your people told me something was missing. Do not call my life staged because your system learned how to forget it. Victor did not respond to her. He spoke to Marcus. Do not engage further on site. I am almost there. The call ended. For a moment the dawn felt even colder. Marcus looked at the red folder again. His first instinct had been to separate emotion from evidence. But the evidence was emotional because real life was. Receipts were money she did not spend on food. Medical letters were nights a child could not breathe easily. School notes were a daughter learning adult fear before multiplication tables. A folder was not just paper when every page represented a door someone else might close. Lauren's tablet chimed. The old case prefix returned a partial archive match, she said. Marcus turned toward her. Open it. She did. The result was fragmented, scanned from an old legal aid database that had been merged twice and nearly lost. Southside Family Housing Rights Center. Case RF 1187. Tenant initials. RE Intake Support. DB Property Owner. Redfern Holdings. Complaint type. Disputed payment, improper lockout, missing receipt record. Status. Administratively closed. Marcus stared at Redfern Holdings. The name was familiar but not from childhood. It was in the acquisition history of Hawthorne Court. Redfern had once owned several buildings now folded into the redevelopment portfolio Ellison Community. Holdings purchased 18 months earlier. The old case had not simply followed Marcus from memory. It was buried in the lineage of the building itself. Tasha watched him absorb it. What does that mean? I do not know yet, Marcus said. It was the most honest answer he had given all morning. Elaine seized on it. Then we should not speculate. Tasha looked at her. You had no problem speculating I was lying. A black SUV pulled up behind Marcus's sedan. The back door opened and Victor Lang stepped out in a navy overcoat, silver hair neat, face composed, carrying a leather folder thin enough to suggest confidence. He did not look surprised by the boxes or the child or the red folder. He looked annoyed that the scene had lasted long enough for Marcus to see it. Marcus, he said, walking toward them. We need to move this inside. Tasha's grip tightened. Inside where? My apartment or your version of the file? Victor's eyes went to the red folder. For the first time his composure shifted. Barely. But Marcus saw it. Not confusion. Recognition. Victor looked at the faded blue stamp, then at Tasha, then at Marcus. That material is not relevant, he said. Marcus did not move. I have not told you what material it is. The sidewalk went quiet. Even Ariel stopped gathering papers. Victor adjusted his cuff, recovering quickly. I can see it is historical legal aid paperwork. Residents sometimes attach old documents to create sympathy. Tasha's voice dropped. My mother's folder does not need sympathy. Marcus looked at Victor. Why does an old case involving my mother's initials and Redfern Holdings connect to a current eviction in a building we bought from the same portfolio? Victor's face closed like a door. Because old buildings carry old paper. That does not change today's facts. Lauren's tablet chimed again before anyone could answer. She looked down. Marcus, there is another issue. What? The scanned confirmation number from Ms. Bennett's hardship packet was not corrupted at upload. It was manually moved to inactive review. Marcus looked at Victor. By whom? Lauren swallowed. Transition office. User credentials assigned to Victor Lang. Tasha stared at Victor. Jonah shifted weakly against her. Ariel stood with the damp worksheet in both hands. Marcus felt the story tilt, but not yet open fully. The company file had said Tasha failed to provide proof. The red folder said she had. The archive said the folder carried his mother's past. The system now showed Victor had touched the missing packet. It was not enough to prove the whole scheme. Not yet. But it was enough to make Marcus realize the first lie had not been in Tasha's folder. It had been in his own report. Tasha Bennett did not learn to keep proof because she trusted paper. She learned it because she had watched paper become the only thing people with power were willing to hear. When she was 9 years old, her mother, Denise Bennett, cleaned the Southside Family Housing Rights Center after hours, pushing a gray mop bucket through narrow halls where families had sat all day with rent receipts, shut-off notices, court letters, and envelopes folded so many times the creases had turned white. Denise was not a lawyer, and she never acted like one. She wore rubber gloves, carried trash bags, refilled paper towels, and wiped fingerprints from the glass door after everyone else went home. But some nights, when Tasha sat in the waiting room doing homework because there was no one to watch her, she saw more truth from that plastic chair than most adults saw from desks. She saw old women pull money order stubs from their purses like they were photographs of children. She saw fathers in work boots trying to explain late fees they did not understand. She saw mothers with babies sleeping against their shoulders saying the same sentence in different ways. I gave them the paper. They said they never got it. Denise listened while she cleaned. She did not interrupt. She did not promise what she could not give. But when a copy was left in the machine, or a receipt slid under a chair, or a form was found in the wrong bin, Denise placed it on the front desk with a sticky note that said, "Do not throw this away." One night, after a thunderstorm flooded the storage closet, boxes of old supplies were set near the back door for disposal. Red folders, blue folders, file tabs, cracked binders, blank intake sheets. Denise picked up one red folder with a coffee stain near the corner and turned it in her hands. Tasha remembered the way her mother looked at it, as if it was not office trash but a small shield nobody had claimed yet. "Why you want that old thing?" Tasha asked. Denise smiled without showing her teeth. "Because old things know how to survive." She took the folder home, dried it near the radiator, and wrote 3 words across the front in black marker. "Do not lose." Years later, after Denise got sick, after medical bills ate through savings that had never been large enough to defend themselves, she gave the folder to Tasha on a Sunday afternoon while sunlight came through the blinds in thin gold lines. Tasha was 17 then, still young enough to think adulthood was mostly about getting away from other people's problems. Denise tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "Baby girl, you will not always have money, but you need proof. If they lose your paper, they lose your voice. Do not let them make you disappear on paper." Tasha had nodded because daughters nod when mothers say serious things, even when they do not yet understand the cost of ignoring them. She understood later. She understood when Denise died and the hospital bill had one balance on Monday and another by Friday. She understood when a landlord said he never received a maintenance request after black mold spread near the bathroom window. She understood when Ariel's father promised to help with rent, and then left Chicago for Atlanta with a new phone number and a story about needing to start over. Tasha stopped waiting for rescue early. She learned how to stretch a paycheck, how to fix a zipper with dental floss, how to cut Jonah's hair with kitchen scissors and still make him laugh, how to heat an apartment with the oven door closed because she knew the danger of doing otherwise, how to smile at Ariel's teacher when the school supply list had 12 items and her cart could only hold 8. She did not call any of that tragedy. She called it Tuesday. When Hawthorne Court accepted her application for apartment 2D, she felt something close to victory. The building was old with chipped trim, a stairwell light that flickered, and radiators that complained before giving heat, but the door opened with her key. That mattered. The lease had her name on it. That mattered more. On the first night, Ariel was 3 years old and ran from the kitchen to the window in socks, laughing because the apartment echoed. Tasha placed Jonah's baby blanket in the bedroom drawer, taped the yellow sun drawing to the refrigerator, and slid the red folder into the top kitchen cabinet beside the coffee mugs. "This is where we keep important things," she told Ariel. Ariel looked at the folder. "Is it money?" Tasha kissed her forehead. "Sometimes proof is what you need when money is not enough." For a while, life was hard but understandable. Tasha worked overnight. Care at Lakeside Manor Nursing Home, changing sheets, helping residents to the bathroom, listening to stories from people whose families visited less often than they promised. On weekends, she took laundry shifts at a hotel near Midway, feeding white sheets into machines that breathed steam onto her face until her scrubs clung to her back. She paid rent in pieces when she had to, but she paid. She bought money orders because cash left no trail and online payments added fees she could not spare. Every receipt went into the red folder. Every notice. Every school letter. Every clinic bill. The folder grew thick not because Tasha was careless, but because she was careful in a world that punished people for trusting memory. Then Jonah's breathing got worse in February. It began with coughing at night, then clinic visits, then a specialist referral, then medication that insurance covered only partly. Tasha missed 2 laundry shifts and 1 nursing home shift because childcare fell through and Jonah had a fever. The rent came up short by $600. Not forever. Just that month. She went to Elaine Porter before the due date, wearing clean scrubs, holding the red folder with both hands. "I need a hardship review," she said. Elaine looked over the counter with a soft administrative smile. "Bring proof of income disruption and medical expense." Tasha brought it the next morning. Denise's folder under her arm. Jonah in a stroller with his dinosaur cup. Ariel beside her holding a school library book. Elaine scanned the hospital note, the clinic bill, the work schedule, the money order copies, and the school counselor letter. Tasha watched every page pass under the scanner light. She heard the machine pull the paper in. She heard it slide out. She asked for confirmation. Elaine printed one and slid it across the counter. Hardship documents received for preliminary review. Tasha put it in the red folder before she left the office. 3 days later, the portal said incomplete. Tasha returned. Elaine said the system sometimes took time. A week later, a late fee appeared. Tasha returned again. Elaine said the medical document was not properly attached. Tasha opened the red folder and showed the confirmation. Elaine said preliminary receipt was not final verification. Then Victor Lang's office sent an email that sounded helpful until Tasha read it twice. "Please submit missing documents to avoid further action." Missing. That word became a hallway she could not get out of. Tasha submitted the packet again at the public library, paying 20 cents a page to scan documents she had already given them. The upload confirmation went into the folder. Then the portal said corrupted file. She brought originals in person. Elaine copied them. Then a reprocessing fee appeared. She paid $150 after an extra overnight shift. The payment went into suspense. She paid $325 the next week. It went unallocated. She called. She emailed. She stood at the office counter while Jonah coughed into his sleeve and Ariel did homework against the wall. Each time the answer moved just far enough away to stay unreachable. Not enough proof. Wrong attachment. Balance changed. Review pending. Notice generated. Tasha began writing dates and times on the backs of every paper. She wrote who she spoke to, what they said, which child was with her, whether the scanner worked, whether Elaine looked at the folder too long. It felt extreme until the first neighbor disappeared from the floor below. Mrs. Kelvin from 1B came home from a hospital shift and found her key no longer worked. The file said voluntary surrender. Mrs. Kelvin said she had only gone to work. Then a man from 3F had his belongings moved to storage while he was driving a delivery route. The file said declined relocation. He said no one offered him anything. Tasha started to understand that the problem was not only her rent balance. Hawthorne Court was being prepared for someone who did not want to see residents in the hallways. The notices got cleaner as the building got colder. New signage appeared near the lobby. The office smelled like fresh paint. Men in press jackets walked through with tablets, pointing at ceilings, mailboxes, camera mounts, empty corners. Elaine began saying phrases like transition schedule and investor readiness. Victor Lang's name appeared at the bottom of more messages. First, he was only a signature. Then he became the invisible hand moving her documents from submitted to incomplete, her payments from partial to unverified, her requests from pending to failed. Tasha never met him face to face, but she learned the rhythm of his office. Every time she challenged one line, another line appeared. Every time she showed proof, the system generated a new absence. The red folder became heavier than its paper. It carried the lease that proved apartment 2D was hers. It carried the money order receipts that proved she had paid. It carried the medical note that proved Jonah's care had changed her month. It carried Ariel's school letter, written by a counselor who noticed the child falling asleep during reading group. It carried the confirmation Elaine printed with her own office header. It carried Denise's last letter, folded so many times the paper felt soft as cloth. And tucked behind the old legal aid page was the case sheet Tasha had never fully understood. RF 1187, DB intake support, RE tenant, Redfern Holdings disputed payment, improper lockout, missing receipt record. Tasha kept it because her mother had kept it. She did not know RE was Ruth Ellison. She did not know Redfern Holdings had once owned the same chain of buildings, now buried inside Marcus Ellison's portfolio. She did not know Victor Lang had been a young compliance officer back then, close enough to the old complaint to know which papers had to disappear. All she knew was that when Elaine saw the old stamped page, her face changed. After that, the pressure sharpened. A final notice appeared under the door at an hour no office should be working. A possession review was scheduled without a clear time. A portal message claimed relocation help had been declined, though Tasha had never opened the link, because it had never arrived where she could see it. Then, at 3:43 in the morning, the last notice slid beneath her door like a quiet accusation. Tasha picked it up, wrote the time on the back, and placed it in the folder. She had not slept more than 90 minutes. She had 2 children to feed, a medicine refill to pick up, and a nursing home shift waiting that night. Still, when Elaine knocked before dawn with maintenance workers behind her, Tasha had the red folder in her hand. That was why she fell into the present already holding the thing they most wanted to separate from her. Not because she expected a billionaire to recognize it. Not because she knew it carried the initials of his mother. But because Denise Bennett had been right all along. People who could not afford to be believed had to carry proof like a second spine. And when the chain came off the door, when Ariel's backpack was placed in the hallway, when Jonah's medicine remained in the kitchen cabinet behind a lock, when Elaine said there was no complete hardship packet in the system, Tasha understood the root of the cruelty with perfect clarity. The system did not need to prove she had failed. It only needed to misplace every page that proved she had not. By 6:12 in the morning, the hallway at Hawthorne Court had begun to look exactly the way Victor Lang wanted it to look from a distance. Not clean. Not yet. But almost cleared. The maintenance workers had moved Tasha Bennett's laundry basket, 2 cardboard boxes, a folded blanket, and Jonah's blue backpack down to the curb. Ariel's school papers were stacked inside one box, damp at the edges from the early mist. A plastic grocery bag of medicine receipts sat beneath a pair of children's shoes. The red folder was still in Tasha's arms. That was the only part of the scene Victor had not controlled, and everyone could feel how much it bothered him. He stood beside the black SUV in a navy overcoat, silver hair neat, face calm enough to be mistaken for fairness by people who had never been on the wrong side of him. Marcus Ellison stood across from him near the glass entrance, Lauren beside him with the tablet, Elaine Porter under the awning with her clipboard held lower now, and Tasha on the steps with Jonah's head tucked beneath her chin. Ariel stood close enough that her shoulder touched her mother's coat. She was trying to be brave in the quiet way children become brave when adults do not give them room to fall apart. Victor looked at his watch. "We have less than 50 minutes before the lobby team arrives." Tasha looked up. "The lobby team?" Elaine answered too quickly. "Cleaning and staging." "Staging," Tasha repeated. "That is what you call moving children's clothes off the floor before rich people come look around?" Victor's expression did not change. "This building is scheduled for an investor walkthrough at 9. Public areas need to be safe, orderly, and free of personal property." Tasha glanced at the curb, where her son's blanket was half inside a box and half hanging over the side. "That is not personal property. That is our life." Victor turned to Marcus instead of answering her. "This is why I advised against engaging on site. The facts are becoming emotional." Marcus looked at the tablet in Lauren's hand, where the tenant file still claimed Tasha's hardship packet had failed verification. His face was stern, but Tasha could see the hesitation under it. He had seen enough to doubt the system. He had not yet seen enough to defy it completely. That difference could cost her everything. Jonah coughed against her shoulder, a small, dry, tired sound. Tasha shifted him upright and reached into the tote bag hanging from her elbow. She found the backup inhaler, shook it once and heard the thin hollow rattle inside. Almost empty. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them before fear could settle. "His new inhaler is upstairs," she said. "Kitchen cabinet, left side beside the cereal box." Victor spoke with a measured calm that made the words colder. "Essential medical items can be retrieved after the property inventory is completed." "When?" "The office opens at 9. Ariel looked toward the locked building door. "But the people with money come at 9. No one answered her. That silence told the truth faster than any adult could have. Tasha lowered Jonah onto the step beside her and knelt in front of him, shielding him from the wind with her coat. Slow breaths, baby. In and out. Like we practiced. Jonah tried. His eyes were heavy. His small hand held the edge of her sleeve. Ariel pulled the blue backpack from the box and unzipped it, searching for the spare spacer but only found crayons, a folded lunch note, and a library book wrapped in a plastic bag. It is not in here, she whispered. I know, Tasha said. She knew because she had placed the medicine bag on the kitchen counter the night before, beside the lunch containers, so she would not forget it after school drop-off. She had planned the morning. She had planned the refill. She had planned the work shift. What she had not planned was a property manager at her door before dawn, a man with a tablet, and a system that decided her child's breathing could wait until after inventory. Marcus turned to the maintenance worker. Open the unit and let her get the medicine. Victor raised one hand. No, the word was quiet, but the authority behind it had been practiced. The possession has been executed. If we allow unsupervised reentry, chain of custody becomes disputed. Any claim of missing property, damaged property, or document placement becomes impossible to verify. Tasha stood slowly. You are worried I might move paper around in my own home? Victor looked at the red folder. I am worried about preserving an accurate record. Then preserve this. She lifted the folder. Because this is the record you keep trying not to read. Elaine's phone buzzed. She looked down then swallowed. Victor, the walkthrough team is asking if the lobby will be ready by 8. Victor did not take his eyes off Marcus. It will be. Tasha heard the certainty in that answer and understood that she and her children were not people in his timeline. They were clutter. A delay. A risk to be removed before the building had to smile. Then her own phone rang from inside her coat pocket. The screen showed Ariel's school. Tasha's stomach tightened before she answered. This is Tasha Bennett. She listened. Her face changed from anger into concentration. The controlled stillness of a mother trying not to let strangers hear her panic. Yes, ma'am, Ariel is with me. A pause. No, she is not skipping school. We had an emergency at our apartment. Ariel stared at her shoes. No, I do not have a new address. I still live here. Tasha closed her eyes. Please do not mark us unstable. I am handling it. The word handling sounded too small for what it was being asked to carry. Yes, I understand you have policies. But my daughter is not unsafe because I failed. My daughter is standing outside because someone changed a door before reading the papers I gave them. Marcus looked away from Victor and toward her. Lauren stopped typing. Elaine's face tightened, as if the school call had made the scene more dangerous than the eviction itself. Tasha listened a moment longer. No, please do not call anyone yet. Give me 2 hours. Please. Ariel looked up sharply. Call who? Tasha ended the call and lowered the phone. For a second she did not answer. Jonah coughed again, softer but still wrong. Ariel's eyes began to shine. Mama, call who? Tasha crouched in front of her daughter. The school has rules when a child says she does not know where she is sleeping. Ariel's mouth trembled. But I know. I am sleeping upstairs. Tasha touched her cheek. That is what I am trying to make them remember. Victor adjusted his cuff. This is precisely why we need to complete the process and connect Ms. Bennett with formal resources. Tasha looked at him. Do not use my children as proof that you should finish hurting us. Marcus's head turned toward Victor. What formal resources were offered? Victor gave a small sigh, as if disappointed by the inefficiency of compassion. Relocation portal notice. Shelter contact list.
Tenan Chansitino hotline.
Lauren looked down at the tablet. There is no confirmation that she opened the relocation notice. Victor said. Portal use is the resident's responsibility. Tasha opened the red folder and pulled out a printed email. I asked Elaine for relocation help in person. She told me I did not qualify until my hardship review was complete. Your office then marked the hardship review incomplete. She turned the page around so Marcus could see without taking it. That is the loop. You built a circle and called it my fault when I could not get out. Marcus read the email. His face darkened. Elaine. Elaine looked at Victor before answering. I followed the transition guidance. Which guidance? Marcus asked. Victor stepped in. This conversation is not productive in a public setting. It is productive for me, Tasha said. This is the first time the circle has had witnesses. A city sanitation truck rumbled down the block. The sky was lighter now, turning from gray-blue to pale silver. People were leaving for work. A woman in scrubs paused with a coffee in her hand. A man in a delivery uniform slowed near the bus stop. 2 older residents came down to the lobby and stood behind the glass, watching the people outside decide whether a family would be allowed back into its own apartment for medicine. At 6:31, Lauren's tablet chimed. She looked at the screen and went still. Marcus. What is it? Ariel Bennett was flagged in the resident family risk note at 6:24. Tasha straightened. Flagged how? Lauren hesitated. Potential instability due to possession completion. Recommended referral if no verified address by end of day. Ariel's face went blank in the way children go blank when a fear is too large to understand all at once. Referral. Tasha stepped toward Victor. You just did that. Victor's voice remained even. Automated protocol triggers when a household with minors completes possession without confirmed relocation. We did not complete anything, Tasha said. You locked us out before breakfast. Marcus looked at the timestamp. 6:24. That was after I asked you to pause. Victor's eyes cooled. The system had already entered possession status. Who confirmed it? Lauren checked. Transition office. Marcus said. Name. Lauren swallowed. Victor Lang. The sidewalk seemed to still. Tasha felt the red folder press against her ribs. He had not only moved her out, he had moved the danger forward. If the day ended with no verified address, Ariel's school file could change. Jonah's medical care notes could change. Tasha's name could begin appearing in systems outside housing, systems that asked questions poor mothers feared, even when they had done nothing wrong. Not because their children were unloved, but because poverty and neglect were too often made to stand in the same line. Tasha looked at Marcus, and this time she did not sound angry. She sounded plain. This is how they take more than the apartment. Marcus did not answer because there was nothing to deny. Victor did. No one is taking your children, Miss Bennett. That is inflammatory. You just made a file saying I might not have somewhere for them to sleep. Because you refused to complete relocation steps. Because you hid the steps behind a portal message I never saw and a hardship review you buried. Your interpretation is not evidence. Ariel stepped forward with the damp worksheet in her hand. Her voice was small but steady. My mom has evidence. Victor looked down at her, and for 1 second, the mask slipped just enough to show annoyance. This is an adult matter. Tasha pulled Ariel gently back. No. You made it her matter when you put her backpack on the curb. Marcus took a breath and turned to Victor. Unlock the apartment now. Victor shook his head. I cannot allow that. Marcus's voice sharpened. You cannot allow it? Operationally. No. Legally I advise against it. Financially it jeopardizes readiness. If the investors see an active possession dispute in the hallway, the walkthrough may be delayed, funding may be affected, and the board will ask why one non-compliant tenant was allowed to disrupt a multi-million-dollar community renewal. Tasha looked up at the building. Community renewal without the community. Victor ignored her. Marcus, you built this company to scale. Scale requires process. If every resident with a folder can stop possession, nothing moves. Marcus looked at the red folder. Maybe some things should stop when a resident has receipts. Victor's mouth tightened. Receipts can be fabricated. The sentence came out clean, but its effect was immediate. Ariel flinched. Tasha felt it like a hand against her chest. Not because Victor had surprised her. Because he had said it in front of her daughter. A mother could survive being doubted by strangers. It was harder to watch doubt enter a child's eyes and try to make a home there. Ariel looked at Tasha. You did not make fake papers. Tasha turned fully toward her daughter. No, baby. I did not. Then why can he say that? Tasha looked at Victor, then at Elaine, then at Marcus. Because some people think a poor woman's proof is guilty until a rich man believes it. That sentence made Marcus look down. Not from shame alone but from recognition. He had been that rich man for the last 20 minutes. Victor's phone rang. He checked it. The investor liaison is asking for confirmation that public areas are cleared by 7. Marcus reached out. Put it on speaker. Victor did not move. Marcus's voice lowered. Put it on speaker. Victor answered and placed the phone outward. A man's voice filled the damp air. Victor, are we clear for the 9 o'clock arrival? Financing team wants no resident activity on the first 2 floors. The lobby images need to match the deck. Marcus stared at him. This is Marcus Ellison. What lobby images? Silence. Then the man stammered. Sir, the pre-walkthrough deck. Empty corridor views, cleared entry. No personal storage or active disputes. Tasha closed her eyes. Empty corridor views. No personal storage. Active disputes. That was what her family had become before sunrise. Not tenants. Not children. Not a mother with receipts. Visual problems. Marcus ended the call slowly. Victor said, that is standard investor communication. Marcus looked at him. No. That is the reason she is outside. Victor's face hardened. The reason she is outside is unresolved non-payment and incomplete documentation. Tasha opened the red folder and pulled out the stack of money order receipts, the hardship confirmation, the school letter, the medical note, and the email from Elaine, holding them against the folder cover with one hand. Then look at them now. In front of everyone. Victor said, I will not validate a sidewalk performance. Jonah coughed again, and this time Tasha heard the small strain underneath it. She turned toward the locked entrance. I am done asking. Elaine stepped in front of the door. Miss Bennett, do not make this worse. Tasha stopped inches from the step, holding Jonah close. Her voice was quiet. Worse is my child's medicine behind that door while you check a clock for investors. Marcus looked at the maintenance worker. Unlock it. Victor stepped between them. If you override possession in public, I will have to document that decision as executive interference. Marcus stepped closer. Document it. Victor's eyes narrowed. And if the board sees you compromising a 9-figure redevelopment because a tenant produced questionable paper from an unrelated old case? Tasha lifted the red folder. He keeps calling it unrelated. Lauren's tablet chimed again. This time she did not wait to be asked. Marcus, the status on Unit 2D just changed. Marcus turned. To what? Final cleared. Personal property authorized for curb removal. Timestamp. 6:43 a.m. Tasha stared at the tablet. Her boxes were already on the curb. Her son's medicine was already locked inside. Her daughter's school had already called. But now the system had made it official while they stood there watching. Who changed it? Marcus asked, though the answer had already begun to form in the silence. Lauren looked at Victor. Transition office.
Victor lang.
The air seemed to leave the morning. Victor put his phone into his coat pocket. The site must be ready. Tasha looked at Marcus, and the last polite layer left her voice. You wanted to know why I carry this folder? Because men like him can take a home while standing right in front of the truth and still call it readiness. At the curb, a city street cleaning truck turned the corner with yellow lights flashing, scheduled to pass that block before 7. One of Tasha's cardboard boxes sat too close to the gutter. Ariel saw it first and ran to pull it back before the wheels reached the curb lane, dragging it with both hands while papers slid inside. Tasha moved after her, Jonah in her arms, red folder under her elbow, heart racing not from danger alone but from the terrible understanding of how quickly the world could scatter what she had fought to keep together. Marcus watched the child pull the box away from the street, watched the mother bend over both children, watched Victor check the time, and understood the deadline fully at last. If he did not act before 7, the hallway would be clear, the boxes would be removed, the system would show possession complete, the school would show housing instability, the investors would see a building ready for money, and Tasha Bennett would be left with nothing but a red folder everyone in power could still choose not to read. Marcus Ellison did not stop the street cleaning truck with money, authority, or a speech. He stopped it by stepping off the curb and raising one hand in front of the yellow flashing lights while Ariel Bennett dragged the cardboard box back with both arms and Tasha Bennett held Jonah against her chest as if her body could become a wall around both children. The truck slowed with a tired hiss, the driver leaning toward the windshield, confused by the sight of a billionaire in polished shoes standing between city machinery and a poor woman's wet belongings before sunrise. For one suspended second, the whole block seemed to hold its breath. Then Marcus turned back toward Hawthorne Court, toward Victor Lang, toward Elaine Porter, toward the glass doors and the hallway that was supposed to be clear by 7. "Nothing else gets moved," he said. Victor's face tightened. "You do not have the full facts." "Then we will get them now." Marcus looked at Lauren. "Pull every possession completion at Hawthorne Court from the last 10 days. Every unit. Every hardship packet. Every relocation notice. Every payment marked unallocated." Victor stepped forward. "That is not appropriate in a public setting." Tasha looked at him from the curb, the red folder pressed under one arm, Jonah's head resting against her shoulder, Ariel's small hand still gripping the box. "It was public when you put my children's things outside." The street cleaning truck idled beside them. Its engine rumbled through the pavement. Across the street, more people had stopped. A woman in scrubs. A bus driver with a coffee cup. A man carrying a delivery bag. 2 residents had come down to the front door and stood behind the glass, not yet stepping out, as if they were afraid being seen would put their own names in a file. Lauren opened the company dashboard, her face lit blue by the tablet. "Marcus," she said quietly, "there are 17 possession completions in the last 10 days. Tasha turned. 17. Elaine shifted. Victor did not. Marcus kept his eyes on the screen. How many marked voluntary exit? Lauren swallowed. All 17. A sound moved through the people watching, not loud, not dramatic, just the low human reaction to a word that had finally become too false to carry itself. Marcus took the tablet from Lauren and scrolled. Unit 1B. Unit 3F. Unit 4C. Unit 5A. Unit 6D. Each record had similar language. Resident declined assistance. Resident failed to verify hardship. Resident vacated voluntarily. Personal property removed after notice. The phrases repeated with the same clean rhythm, as if 17 different families had all chosen the same words to disappear. "Show camera for 1B, Marcus said. Victor's voice sharpened. "Marcus, security footage is not meant for sidewalk review." Marcus looked at him. "It is meant for truth." Lauren pulled the hallway camera. The timestamp showed 5:42 a.m., 6 days earlier. Mrs. Kelvin, a nursing assistant from the first floor, appeared on the screen in blue scrubs, hair wrapped in a scarf, lunch bag on her shoulder, key in hand. She reached apartment 1B, tried the lock, stopped, tried again, then placed both palms on the door as if her own home had suddenly become a stranger. She did not look voluntary. She looked exhausted. She looked stunned. She looked exactly like a woman coming back from work to a door that no longer recognized her. Tasha stared at the video and her face changed. "Mrs. Kelvin told me she went to her sister's after that." A resident behind the glass door whispered. "She did. She was crying in the laundry room the next day." Lauren opened the next clip. Unit 3F. A man in a delivery jacket returned just after midnight, tried his key, checked his phone, knocked softly on his own door, then sat on the hallway floor with his head lowered while the building camera watched without helping. The file said voluntary exit. The camera said locked out after work. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Open the payment records." Lauren did. Several of the same units had partial payments marked suspense, unallocated, or pending verification. Search for hardship packets. More files opened. Some were marked corrupted. Some incomplete. Some inactive review. The pattern was not perfect yet, but it was visible enough to change the air. Marcus looked at Tasha's red folder, then at the tablet, then at the residents behind the glass. How many of these people were night shift workers? Lauren filtered by employment notes where available. Her voice went quiet. At least 11. Victor gave a controlled sigh. Lower income housing often includes non-traditional work hours. That correlation does not prove wrongdoing. Tasha stepped away from the curb, Ariel now beside her with the rescued box. "You keep using words that sound expensive so nobody hears what they mean. They came home from work and their keys did not work." Marcus turned to Lauren. "Compare possession times to resident work schedules where documented." Victor moved closer. No, Marcus did not look at him. "Lauren." She tapped. The tablet loaded a spreadsheet from the transition folder. Marcus saw the columns first. Unit, balance, hardship status, work pattern, recommended action window. His stomach turned before he read the rows. Unit 1B.
Auvergnat Hospital Aide.
Recommended action. After 5 a.m. Unit 3F. Delivery route late return. Recommended action. Before 1 a.m. Unit 5A. Warehouse shift. Recommended action. After departure. Unit 2D. Nursing home overnight, 2 minors medical need noted. Recommended action. Before school movement. Tasha moved closer slowly, as if every step brought her toward a truth she had known but never wanted confirmed. Before school movement, she read. Ariel looked up. That means before we went to school? Tasha placed one hand on her daughter's shoulder, but her eyes stayed on the screen. Yes. Marcus's grip tightened around the tablet. Who created this? Lauren checked the file details. Transition planning attachment. Uploaded by Victor Lang's office. Shared with local management. Elaine's face drained of color. Victor's tone stayed measured, but the softness had left it. Action windows are standard for minimizing conflict and ensuring safe access for staff. Tasha looked at him. You mean you waited until people were gone? I mean we reduced the chance of confrontation. With the truth. He turned to Marcus. This is being misconstrued. Marcus scrolled further. Near the bottom of the attachment was a column titled Resident Visibility Risk. Some rows said low. Some said moderate. Tasha's row said high, red folder, repeated in-person documentation, possible legacy legal aid material. Marcus read it twice. Legacy legal aid material, he said. Victor's face changed almost imperceptibly. Tasha saw it. You knew about the folder. Elaine looked down at her clipboard. Marcus looked at Elaine. Who reported that? Elaine did not answer. Tasha answered for her. She did. Last week. She asked where I got it, and after that everything moved faster. Marcus looked back at the attachment. Another line sat beneath the risk column. Avoid extended document review on site. Refer to transition office. Tasha's voice dropped. So that was the plan. Do not read it where I can see you read it. Victor stepped forward. That document is an internal risk management tool. It does not prove improper action. It proves you knew she had proof, Marcus said. It proves we knew she was likely to create delay. Delay of what? Victor's mouth closed. Lauren answered before he could choose another phrase. There is an investor readiness memo attached. Marcus opened it. The memo was not long, but every sentence felt like a polished stone thrown through someone's window. Hawthorne Court must present as substantially cleared. Public areas free of personal belongings. Resident disputes resolved or removed from view. Possession actions should be completed before first investor arrival. Resolved or removed from view, Marcus read aloud. Tasha looked toward the curb, where her boxes had almost become part of the street. Removed from view, she repeated. Ariel leaned into her mother's side. Jonah had fallen quiet, his small fingers resting against the red folder's edge. Marcus felt the full midpoint of the story arrive, not as a revelation of one villain yet, but as a map of how the harm worked. The system was not merely failing to see people. It was arranging not to see them. It had names for their schedules, names for their absences, names for their proof, names for the risk of them speaking in public. It had turned working hours into removal windows and children's school mornings into clearance opportunities. Still, the deepest part remained hidden. The old case. The initials. The red folder's connection to his mother. Victor's personal reason for reacting to it so quickly. Marcus turned to Lauren. Find every file with the phrase legacy legal aid material. Lauren searched. Only one result appeared. Unit 2D. Tasha Bennett. Attached note. Possible Redfern historical exposure. Marcus looked at Victor. What is Redfern historical exposure? Victor's face was still, but his eyes had sharpened. Old acquisition language. It is not relevant. Everything you have called irrelevant has mattered. Tasha opened the red folder and pulled out the old stamped page. Her hand was steady now. This is the page you are afraid of. Victor's jaw flexed. Miss Bennett, You do not understand what you are holding. I understand it made you move my family before sunrise. Marcus looked at the page, then at the tablet. The partial archive from the old legal aid office still showed case RF 1187. Ruth Ellison. Denise Bennett. Redfern Holdings. Improper lockout. Missing receipt record. Administratively closed. He did not yet know Victor's role in that old case. He did not yet know why the complaint had been closed. But he knew enough to understand that the red folder had not accidentally become important. Someone in the transition office had flagged it. Someone had told local management not to review it on site. Someone had moved Tasha's hardship packet to inactive review after it was received. Someone had marked 17 families as voluntary while cameras showed them locked outside. The story had changed direction. Tasha was no longer simply defending herself from eviction. She was holding the one object that connected her current case to a buried history inside the building's ownership line. Marcus looked toward the residents behind the glass doors. Open the lobby, he said. Elaine stiffened. The lobby is being staged. Not anymore. Victor stepped in. Marcus, you cannot turn an investor site into a grievance room. Marcus looked at the boxes on the curb. It already is a grievance room. We just put it outside. He handed the tablet back to Lauren. Notify the investor liaison that the walkthrough is paused pending resident access review. Victor's voice went cold. That would be a serious mistake. Tasha looked at Marcus, and this time there was no plea in her face. Only a question. Would he stop at noticing or would he act? Marcus held her gaze, then turned to the maintenance worker. Open the front door. Let Ms. Bennett retrieve the medicine from apartment 2D with witnesses present. Then we review every one of these 17 files in the lobby before anyone moves another box. The maintenance worker looked at Victor, then at Marcus. His hand shook slightly as he reached for the key. Before the key touched the lock, Lauren's tablet chimed again. A new notification appeared from the transition office. Unit 2D document risk update. Resident folder to be collected for evidence preservation if encountered. Marcus read it aloud. Tasha pulled the red folder tighter to her chest. Ariel stepped in front of it as much as her small body could. Victor looked at the locked glass door, then at Marcus, then at the folder. And in the cold light before sunrise, the truth opened halfway. They were not only trying to remove Tasha from the building, they were trying to remove the red folder from the story before anyone discovered what old paper had survived. The moment the lobby door opened, Victor Lang stopped pretending the morning could still be handled quietly. He stepped between Tasha Bennett and the entrance with one hand raised, not touching her, not blocking her like a man in a street argument, but positioning himself the way powerful people do when they believe space belongs to them first. Behind the glass, residents watched from the dim lobby. Mrs. Kelvin from 1B in blue scrubs, a delivery driver from 3F with his jacket half-zipped, an older man holding a cane near the mailboxes, a young mother from 4C with a toddler on her hip. Outside, the street cleaning truck still idled at the curb, its yellow lights flashing across the wet boxes like a warning. Tasha stood on the steps with Jonah in one arm. Ariel pressed close to her side and the red folder locked against her chest. The notification on Lauren's tablet still glowed in the cold morning air. Resident folder to be collected for evidence preservation if encountered. Marcus Ellison read it once more, then looked at Victor. Collected by whom? Victor did not blink. Transition office. You mean you? I mean the company. Tasha's voice cut through the space between them. No. You mean the same office that moved my hardship packet to inactive review. Victor turned toward her with a measured expression that almost resembled concern. Ms. Bennett, that folder contains materials you do not fully understand. Some may be confidential, some may be unrelated, and some may have been obtained improperly. Ariel looked up at her mother. Obtained means what? Tasha did not look away from Victor. He is trying to say I should not have what Grandma gave me. Victor sighed softly. I am saying that if those documents are relevant to an investigation, they must be preserved by authorized personnel. They have been preserved, Tasha said. That is why they are not missing. A small sound moved through the residents behind the glass. Not laughter. Recognition. Victor heard it and changed tactics. He opened the leather folder he had brought from the SUV and pulled out a printed packet clipped neatly at the corner. The paper was dry, smooth, and prepared. "Since this has become public," he said, turning slightly so Marcus and the watching residents could hear, "we need to address the integrity concerns around Ms. Bennett's submissions." Tasha's face went still. Marcus looked at the packet. What integrity concerns? Victor handed the first page toward Marcus, but not toward Tasha. Possible altered receipts, inconsistent payment dates, unverified third-party documentation, use of historical legal aid material unrelated to current tenancy, repeated refusal to follow digital procedures, disruptive conduct during possession. Each phrase was clean enough to sound official and cruel enough to do damage. Ariel's fingers tightened around the edge of her mother's coat. Jonah lifted his head weakly. Elaine Porter stood near the awning, eyes lowered, as if she had seen the packet before and hoped not to be seen seeing it now. Tasha stared at the pages in Victor's hand and felt the old fear arrive. Not loud, not wild, but cold and precise. This was how they did it. Not by saying she was poor. Not by saying she was black. Not by saying they wanted her gone before investors arrived. They built a paper version of her that sounded careless, dishonest, unstable, and difficult, then asked everyone else to respond to that woman instead of the one standing in front of them with a sick child and receipts. Marcus did not take the packet. When was that created? Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. The concerns have accumulated over time. Marcus turned to Lauren. Metadata. Victor's voice hardened. That packet is privileged internal material. So is the truth apparently, Tasha said. Lauren photographed the document code from where Victor held it and searched the system. For several seconds, only the idling truck and Jonah's small cough filled the morning. Then Lauren said, "Generated at 6:47 a.m. Tasha looked at Marcus. "After you told them not to move anything." Lauren continued, quieter now. "Compiled from entries made between 6:24 and 6:46. Source user Victor Lang. Secondary notes from Elaine Porter." Elaine's face flushed. "I only entered what I was instructed to enter." Tasha turned to her. "You entered that my receipts were inconsistent?" Elaine swallowed. "The system showed discrepancies. Because your office did not apply the payments. I do not control allocation. But you controlled the sentence that made me look like I did something wrong." Elaine had no answer. Victor stepped forward half a pace. "Ms. Bennett, you are escalating your own exposure." Marcus's voice lowered. "Do not threaten her." "I am not threatening anyone. I am stating risk. If the folder contains altered materials, if confidential legacy records were removed from legal aid archives, if she has used those documents to interfere with the lawful possession process, then the company has obligations." Tasha looked down at Ariel and saw the child's face. That was the real harm. Not Victor's words alone, but the way they entered her. Daughter. Ariel had held lunchboxes, watched receipts, heard school calls, seen her mother write dates on notices, and still a man in a navy overcoat could stand in front of everyone and suggest the folder was not proof but misconduct. "Mama," Ariel whispered. "Grandma did not steal it." Tasha crouched despite Jonah's weight, bringing her face level with her daughter's. "No, baby. She did not. And neither did I." "Then why does he keep saying it like that?" Tasha smoothed one loose braid away from Ariel's forehead. "Because he wants people to be scared of the folder before they read it." Marcus heard the sentence and knew it was the clearest legal summary anyone had given all morning. Victor heard it too, and the softness vanished from his face. "Enough. The folder needs to be secured now." He looked at Elaine. "Call site security." Elaine hesitated. Marcus turned sharply. "No one calls security." Victor's voice was controlled but hard. "Marcus, you are allowing an active resident dispute to compromise evidence, delay investor readiness, and create public exposure. If you will not secure the materials, I will document executive obstruction." "Document it," Marcus said. "I already told you that. The board will not appreciate improvisation. The board will appreciate not financing illegal erasure." Victor's eyes flashed. "You do not know that it is illegal." Tasha stood again. "He knows it is wrong." The lobby door opened wider, and Mrs. Kelvin stepped out. She was still wearing her nursing shoes, Her blue scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, and she carried a small envelope in her hand. "I have my money order receipts too," she said. Her voice trembled, but she did not step back. "They said I left voluntarily." "I did not." The delivery driver from 3F followed. "They said I declined relocation." "I never got one." The young mother from 4C stood behind them. "They said my packet was incomplete after Elaine scanned it." Elaine looked trapped now, but Victor moved faster than sympathy could form. "This is exactly what I warned about. One public dispute becomes a coordinated claim event." Mrs. Kelvin looked at him. "Coordinated? We live here. That is the coordination." More residents gathered behind the glass. Phones came out, not raised high like a spectacle, but held at chest level like protection. Victor turned to Marcus. "If you open this lobby as a grievance site, the investor walkthrough is over." Marcus looked at the residents, at Tasha, at Ariel's damp sleeve, at Jonah's tired face, at the red folder, then at the tablet still showing 17 voluntary exits that did not look voluntary on camera. "Then it is over." Victor's expression changed. For the first time, anger reached the surface. "You are going to risk a 9-figure redevelopment because a tenant produced a sentimental folder?" Tasha took one step forward. "Do not call my mother sentimental." Victor ignored her and spoke to Marcus. "You are reacting to your own childhood, not the facts." The words landed too close to the wound. Marcus went still. The sidewalk went quiet. Victor had meant to make him look emotional, compromised, unfit to lead. For 1 second it almost worked. Marcus saw himself at 11, saw his mother's red folder, saw the locked door, saw the boy he had spent his life turning into a man no landlord could ignore. He also saw how easily that memory could be used to discredit him now, the same way Tasha's motherhood was being used to discredit her. "Maybe," Marcus said quietly, "my childhood is why I know what a file sounds like when it is lying." Victor's mouth tightened. He lifted the packet. "Then let us stay with files." Ms. Bennett's payment receipts show dates inconsistent with ledger application. The hardship packet was incomplete. The old legal aid page has no chain of custody. The folder itself may contain documents removed from a defunct nonprofit archive. Until verified, it cannot be treated as credible. Tasha opened the red folder with steady hands. "Then verify it here," Victor said. "That is not how verification works. It is how truth works when the office keeps losing it." She pulled out the money order receipts, the hardship confirmation, the school letter, the medical note, and the old stamped page, keeping each one in her own hands. "Look at the numbers. Look at the dates. Look at Elaine's email. Look at the confirmation she printed. Look at the note where your office moved my packet after it was received." Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced down. His face tightened just enough for Marcus to notice. "Who is that?" Marcus asked. Victor put the phone away. "Counsel." "Put it on speaker."
No, Marcus stepped closer.
"You have been conducting this possession in public since before dawn. Put it on speaker." Victor did not. Lauren's tablet chimed at the same moment. Her face changed. "Marcus, the investor liaison just received an updated readiness report." "From whom?" "Transition office." Victor looked at her. Lauren read. "Hawthorne Court possession issue contained. Non-compliant tenant engaging in document disruption. Personal property removal delayed due to executive review. Recommend board notification if investor access is compromised." Tasha let out a slow breath. "He is writing the story while we are standing in it." Marcus looked at Victor. "You sent that." Victor's face was once again calm. "I reported material facts. You called her proof document disruption. Because that is what it is becoming." Ariel stepped forward before Tasha could stop her, holding the damp worksheet from the curb. "My mom writes everything down because you keep changing it." Victor looked down at her. "Young lady, this is not your concern." The child's eyes filled, but she did not move. "It is my home." Tasha gently pulled Ariel back, and the motion nearly broke Marcus more than any accusation. A child having to claim her own home in front of executives before breakfast. Victor saw the emotion rising around him and made the strongest move he had left. "Elaine," he said. "Enter refusal to surrender disputed materials and resident interference with possession completion." Elaine froze. Victor. Enter it. Elaine's fingers trembled over her tablet. Tasha understood at once. Another file. Another label. Another record that would make her look difficult when someone reviewed the case later without seeing the morning. Marcus said, Elaine, do not enter that. Victor snapped. She reports to operations on site. Marcus turned to Elaine. And operations reports to me. The property. Manager looked between the two men, the clipboard shaking slightly in her hand. For the first time, the system did not know whose order would survive. Then Lauren whispered, Marcus. He turned. The tenant portal just updated. Tasha's body went rigid. What now? Lauren read from the screen, her voice strained. Unit 2D. Resident declined evidence transfer. Resident refused relocation support. Resident became verbally disruptive. Recommended escalation. Child welfare concern due to unstable housing and non-cooperation. Ariel stopped breathing for half a second. Jonah stirred. Tasha's face went blank with a kind of fear that did not belong to housing anymore. Take that off, she said. Victor spoke evenly. Those are standard risk observations. Take that off my family. Then surrender the folder for review and allow the process to continue. There it was. The trade. The home, the medicine, the school, the children's stability, all pressed against one red folder. Give up the proof and the file might stop getting worse. Keep the proof and the system would start asking whether she was the danger. Tasha looked at Marcus. For the first time all morning, he saw her nearly lose. Not because she doubted the truth. Because a mother will consider almost anything when someone puts her children on the other side of a threat. Her fingers loosened slightly on the folder. Ariel saw it and grabbed the cover with both small hands. No, Mama. Tasha looked down. Baby. Grandma said do not lose. The word struck the morning harder than any legal objection. Tasha closed her hand around the folder again. You are right. Victor's face hardened. Then we proceed with escalation. Marcus took the tablet from Lauren and looked at the new entry at the timestamp at the user history. He did not raise his voice. Victor, you just created a child welfare risk note to pressure her into surrendering evidence. Victor's eyes cooled. That is an outrageous characterization. Marcus turned the tablet so everyone near the doorway could see. Timestamp 6:59. Entered after she refused to hand over the folder. Source Transition Office. The street cleaning truck's yellow lights washed over Victor's face. 7 o'clock had arrived. The hallway was not clear. The investor story was broken. Tasha still had the red folder. But the cost had nearly become unbearable. Victor had not only attacked her documents. He had reached for the one fear every loving mother carries quietly, that poverty will be mistaken for failure and used against her children. Marcus looked at the locked entrance, then at Victor, then at Tasha. Open the lobby, he said. Elaine did not move. Marcus's voice became final. Now. The maintenance worker turned the key. The glass door opened. Residents stepped back to make space. Tasha gathered Ariel and Jonah close, the red folder held between them like a shield. But before she could cross the threshold, Lauren's tablet chimed again. This time it was an archive alert from the old legal aid search. Case RF 1187 had expanded. One new scan page had been recovered. Marcus read the first line and felt the blood leave his face. Compliance contact listed. Victor Lang, Redfern Holdings. Victor saw his own name reflected on the screen and, for the first time since stepping out of the SUV, he looked afraid. The recovered page did not shout. It did not need to. It sat on Lauren's tablet in faded black type, quiet and official. The way old harm often looks when it has had years to hide inside a file. Marcus Ellison stood in the open doorway of Hawthorne Court with the dawn light behind him, the lobby full of residents in front of him, and the red folder still pressed between Tasha Bennett and her children. On the screen were 4 lines that joined the morning together like a key finally turning in a lock. Redfern Holdings.
Compliance contact. Victor Lang.
Complaint type. Disputed payment, improper lockout, missing receipt record. Tenant. Ruth Ellison. Intake support witness. Denise Bennett. For a moment Marcus could not move. Ruth Ellison was not an old story anymore. She was there in the same language that had been used against Tasha. disputed payment, missing receipt, lockout. The words had followed him across 30 years, changed suits, changed company names, changed software systems, and arrived at Hawthorne Court. Before sunrise, wearing Victor Lang's signature, Tasha looked at the tablet, then at Marcus. "Ruth Ellison," she said quietly. "That was your mother." Marcus nodded once. His throat felt too tight for anything more. Ariel looked up at the red folder in her mother's arms. "And Grandma Denise helped her?" Tasha's hand moved over the worn cover, over the words her mother had written. "Do not lose." "She witnessed the intake," Tasha said, reading the line with care. "She kept a copy." Victor's face had lost its polished calm. He stepped forward quickly. "That document is incomplete. It does not establish liability, and it certainly does not connect to today's possession action." Marcus looked at him. "You were the compliance contact. I was a junior employee. You closed the complaint." The complaint was administratively closed. Because the receipt record was missing. Victor's jaw tightened. Records were inconsistent. Tasha lifted the red folder. "That is what you call it when poor people have proof and your office loses it." Marcus scrolled down. Another scan note appeared beneath the case page. It was faint but readable. Resident produced money order copy. Property owner disputes receipt. Lock changed prior to hearing. Intake support recommends escalation. File transferred to compliance. Final status. Closed, insufficient documentation. Marcus remembered his mother at the kitchen table, smoothing the same work uniform over her knees while the landlord's office said her receipt could not be verified. He remembered standing outside a locked door, hearing adults say process while his mother held paper no one wanted to read. He had built a housing company because of that morning, but he had hired the man who had learned how to make that morning repeat itself with cleaner words. Victor spoke lower now. "Marcus, be careful. You are interpreting old fragments through personal trauma." Marcus looked at him. "No. I am interpreting current conduct through an old pattern." Lauren's tablet still showed the new child welfare risk note entered minutes earlier. The 17 voluntary exits, the work schedule action windows, the investor memo, and Tasha's hardship. Packet moved to inactive review. The pieces no longer floated separately. They locked together. Victor had recognized the red folder because he had seen that case system before. He had known Denise Bennett's initials could tie Tasha's folder to a buried complaint. He had known Ruth Ellison's name would make the matter dangerous if Marcus ever read it, so he moved faster. He had Tasha's packet marked inactive. He let payments sit unallocated. He pushed possession before school movement. He labeled her proof as document disruption, and when she refused to surrender the folder, he created a risk note that reached toward her children. Not because the folder was irrelevant, because it was the one object he could not rewrite from the office. Tasha stared at Victor, and the exhaustion in her face sharpened into something steadier than anger. "You knew what my mother kept." Victor looked at her. "Your mother kept copies she had no authority to keep. She kept a woman from disappearing. She violated procedure." Procedure locked his mother out. The lobby went silent. Mrs. Kelvin stood near the mailboxes with tears in her eyes. The delivery driver from 3F lowered his phone slightly, as if the truth had become too heavy to record and too important to stop recording. Elaine Porter covered her mouth with one hand, no longer able to pretend she was only following a neutral system. Marcus looked at Elaine. "Did Victor instruct you not to review the red folder on site?" Elaine's eyes filled. She nodded. "He said if Ms. Bennett produced legacy material, I should refer it to transition office and continue possession." "Did he tell you to mark her hardship packet incomplete?" Elaine looked at Tasha, then down. "He said the packet presented historical exposure and needed to be isolated." Tasha repeated the word softly. "Isolated." Marcus turned to Victor. "You isolated her proof." Victor's voice grew hard. "I managed risk." "No. You managed visibility. You made working families disappear before investors arrived. You used missing paperwork as a tool. You used portal messages residents never opened. You used their work schedules. You used fees, file flags, and false voluntary exits. And when Tasha held proof, you tried to make her look unstable enough that handing it over seemed safer than keeping it. Victor's mouth tightened. You cannot prove intent. Lauren looked at the tablet. There is an email thread attached to the transition memo. Victor's face changed. Marcus said, "Open it." Lauren opened the thread. The subject line read, Hawthorne Court Exposure Control. The date was from the week before. Victor Lang to Elaine Porter and transition staff. Unit 2D presents elevated document risk due to residents' retained red folder and possible Redfern legacy material. Avoid extended discussion at site level. Maintain incomplete status unless directed otherwise. If resident produces folder during possession, secure for evidence preservation and do not allow public review. Marcus read it once. Tasha closed her eyes. Not from surprise. From the terrible relief of having reality finally leave someone else's mouth. Ariel looked at her mother. They planned it. Tasha opened her eyes and pulled her daughter close with her free arm. Yes, baby. Jonah leaned against her coat, breathing softly now, still waiting for medicine that had been locked behind a door for a meeting. Marcus handed the tablet back to Lauren and faced the residents. The full truth is this. Tasha Bennett did not fail to provide documents. Her documents were received, then isolated because they exposed an old pattern tied to this building's ownership history. Her payments were not missing. They were held outside the ledger while fees made her look further behind. Her relocation offer was not meaningfully delivered. Her possession was accelerated to clear the building for investors. And the red folder was targeted because it carried a complaint that connected her mother, my mother, Redfern Holdings, and Victor Lang to the same method being used today. Victor stepped back. That is defamatory. Marcus looked at him. Then let the independent audit prove me wrong. He turned to Tasha. His voice changed. It lost the boardroom edge and became something smaller, more honest. Your mother kept the page my mother needed someone to keep. Tasha looked at the red folder. My mother always said somebody had to remember when offices forgot. Marcus swallowed. She remembered my mother. Tasha did not comfort him. She should not have had to. She stood there with 2 children, wet boxes, a locked apartment, and a folder that had carried more truth than his company had carried responsibility. Then remember mine correctly, she said. Marcus nodded. I will. Then he turned back to Victor. You are relieved of all authority over Hawthorne Court in every active transition file, effective immediately. Victor's expression hardened into panic disguised as outrage. You do not have process for that on a sidewalk. I have enough process to stop harm when I see it. Marcus looked at Lauren. Freeze all possession actions. Preserve every email, status change, payment ledger, portal notice, access log, camera record, and transition memo. Notify independent counsel and the city housing office. The investor walkthrough is cancelled. Elaine whispered. Cancelled. Marcus looked at the lobby, at residents who had been called voluntary while sleeping in cars, on relatives' couches, or outside their own doors. There is nothing here investors need to see before residents are heard. Tasha looked toward the locked stairwell. My son's medicine. Marcus turned to the maintenance worker. Open apartment 2D now with Ms. Bennett present, and no one touches her folder. The worker moved immediately. This time Victor did not stop him. He could not. The red folder had become what he feared most. Not a sentimental object, not an old paper, not a poor woman's desperate prop, but a bridge between 2 erased mothers, 2 generations of missing receipts, and 1 living child waiting for a door to open. As Tasha stepped inside with Ariel and Jonah, the folder stayed under her arm. It had survived Denise's cleaning cart, Ruth Ellison's closed complaint, Redfern's old files, Victor's new system, the curb, the dawn, and the moment a mother almost had to choose between her proof and her children. The truth was complete now. The folder was not there by accident. It had been waiting for the one morning when the people who wrote files would finally have to stand in front of the people who lived them. Justice did not arrive at Hawthorne Court as a donation, a speech, or a billionaire's photograph beside a grateful mother. It arrived first as a key turning in the lock of apartment 2D, while Tasha Bennett stood close enough to watch every movement. The maintenance worker opened the door with Marcus Ellison beside him, Lauren recording the access, 2 residents witnessing from the hallway, and Victor Lang standing several feet away with no authority left to stop it. Tasha entered first with Jonah in her arms and Ariel at her side. The apartment was cold, but it was still home. The lunch containers were still on the towel beside the sink. The yellow sun drawing was still taped to the refrigerator. The medicine bag was still in the kitchen cabinet exactly where Tasha had said it would be. She opened it with hands that trembled only after the zipper gave way, took out Jonah's inhaler and spacer, and knelt in front of him. "Slow, baby," she whispered. "Just like we practiced." Jonah breathed in, then out, then leaned against her with the tired trust of a child who should never have had to wait for adults to finish arguing before he could breathe easier. Ariel stood by the refrigerator, one hand touching the drawing, her face solemn and older than morning should have made it. Marcus did not step fully into the apartment until Tasha looked back and allowed it. That mattered. Nothing about this home would be entered without her permission again. In the hallway, residents gathered quietly while Lauren read Marcus's directives into the record. All possession actions at Hawthorne Court were frozen. All 17 recent voluntary exits were reopened for independent review. Every unallocated payment was preserved and matched against resident receipts. Every hardship packet marked incomplete, corrupted, inactive, or unverified would be reviewed with the resident present. No red folder, receipt, notice, phone record, school letter, medical form, or original document could be taken from a resident without a written receipt and a witness signature. Victor Lang's company access was suspended before 7:30 that morning. The tablet showed his permissions disappearing one by one. Transition dashboard, payment override, possession status, investor readiness memo, resident risk notes. He watched it happen with the rigid stillness of a man who had spent years moving people through systems and had never imagined being moved out of one himself. Marcus did not humiliate him for performance. He did something worse for a man like Victor. He made the record speak. The email thread, the action window spreadsheet, the child welfare risk note, the evidence preservation alert, the Red Fern archive, and the status changes were preserved in front of residents before independent counsel arrived. Elaine Porter stood near the mailboxes with her clipboard lowered at her side. When Marcus asked whether she had been instructed to isolate Tasha's documents, she answered yes. When he asked whether Tasha had brought documents in person, she answered yes. When he asked whether the hardship confirmation had been printed from the site office, she answered yes. Each answer returned a piece of Tasha's dignity that had been taken by cleaner phrases. Incomplete, non-compliant, disruptive, unverified. By 8:15, the investor walkthrough was officially canceled. By 8:30, the lobby had changed from a staged entryway into a resident review room. Folding tables were brought from the community room. Mrs. Kelvin placed her money order receipts beside Tasha's red folder. The delivery driver from 3F brought phone records showing calls to the emergency line. The young mother from 4C brought a school note and a scanned hardship form. Nobody was told to come back later. Nobody was told the system had no record while their hands were holding proof. At 9, when investors were supposed to admire fresh paint and empty hallways, city housing officials walked through the front door instead. Marcus met them without a prepared statement. "Start with the residents," he said. "Not with my company." Tasha sat at the first table with the red folder in front of her, Jonah asleep against her coat, Ariel beside her writing each document name on a sheet of notebook paper, because she wanted to help keep count. Marcus stood several feet away and waited until Tasha looked up before speaking. "Your tenancy is restored," he said. "Your balance is frozen pending correction. Every fee added after your hardship request is under review. Your payment receipts will be credited according to the dates you paid, not the dates someone chose to process them. Your employment, school, and medical records will not be used against you for what happened this morning." Tasha looked at him for a long time. "And my name in the file?" Marcus nodded. "Corrected. In writing. Today. Not hidden. Not hidden." She touched the red folder. "I want every correction attached to the original lie." Marcus absorbed that. Yes. That was when justice became more than reversal. It became record. Victor Lang was escorted out by corporate security after surrendering his company phone, laptop, and access badge to independent counsel. His files were turned over for civil investigation. Elaine Porter was removed from site authority pending formal review, and required to give a written statement to the residents whose paperwork she had marked incomplete. The board received not a polished summary, but the preserved evidence packet with resident witnesses listed by name. Marcus announced a new rule before noon. No possession action involving a household could proceed without verified document receipt, direct resident confirmation, payment ledger review, medical and school safeguard review when children were involved, and an independent housing advocate present. Then he asked Tasha Bennett to serve as the first resident documentation advocate for Hawthorne Court, paid by the company but answerable to the Tenant Review Board. Tasha did not smile right away. She looked at the folder, at Ariel, at Jonah, at the lobby where people had once waited to be ignored. "I will do it," she said. "But not because you gave me a title." Marcus nodded. "Then why?" Tasha placed her palm flat on the red cover, over her mother's handwriting. "Because somebody has to make sure the next mother does not have to stand outside at dawn begging a rich man to read what she already proved." Marcus lowered his eyes. "That is fair." Tasha looked at him steadily. "No. It is necessary." By late afternoon, the boxes that had sat near the curb were carried back upstairs, but this time Tasha told everyone where to put them. Ariel checked each item against her list. Jonah's blue backpack went back on the chair by the door. The folded blanket went on the couch. The school papers were laid out to dry. The yellow sun drawing stayed on the refrigerator, wrinkled at one corner but still bright. And the red folder, no longer treated as suspicious, sat open on the kitchen table while copies were made in front of Tasha, page by page, receipt by receipt, truth by truth. Her dignity had not been returned because Marcus Ellison finally saw her. It had been returned because she had refused to become the woman Victor's file described, and because the folder her mother saved had forced a powerful building to admit what its walls had been hiding. Weeks later, the red folder no longer sat under Tasha Bennett's arm like something she had to protect from the world. A copy of it rested in a small glass case beside the Hawthorne Court mailboxes, next to the new resident documentation rule printed in plain English. No original paper could be taken without a receipt. No hardship packet could be marked missing without resident review. No family could be removed from a file before being heard in person. The old folder still had its coffee stain, its softened corners, and Denise Bennett's words across the cover. "Do not lose." Ariel stopped in front of it every morning on the way to school, her backpack straight on both shoulders, Jonah beside her in his blue jacket, breathing easy. She no longer looked at the folder as proof that they had almost lost their home. She looked at it as proof that her mother had kept their voice when the system tried to make it disappear. Marcus Ellison visited Hawthorne Court without cameras, walking the hallway slowly, reading notices on doors before reading reports in offices. Sometimes he stood before the glass case and saw two mothers in one red folder. Ruth Ellison, whose missing receipt had shaped his life, and Denise Bennett, who had saved a copy nobody thought would matter. Tasha still kept the original folder in apartment 2D, on the kitchen shelf beside the coffee mugs. Not hidden. Not shaking in her hands at dawn. Just there where important things belonged. And every time she opened her own door with her own key, the sound reminded her that dignity was not given back by power. It was kept alive by proof, courage, and one mother who refused to be erased on paper.